All right, welcome back to the Dental Domination Podcast. I'm so excited to be here after a few weeks off. My name is Dan Bryan. I'm the co-founder and VP of Marketing over at DentalScapes. We're a full-service online marketing firm for dental practices specifically, so we work primarily with general dentists, pediatric dentists, as well as orthodontists. And I am not here to sell or talk about our company today. I actually want to learn a little bit more about another cool company that's doing great things in the space. And in particular, we're going to dive into patient engagement today and also the importance and power of patient databases for dental practices. So I'm really excited to have a special guest here today, Samad Syed. Samad is the founder and CEO of M-Consent. And the company is based in the Twin Cities, where I actually was born. So it's got a special place in my heart there. But Samad, you're actually living in Dallas now, avoiding the winter, which I can't blame you for. So if you don't mind, could you just take a few minutes here up front and tell us a little bit more about who you are and what your background is, and in particular, how did you get involved in the healthcare space and in particular patient engagement? Love to hear it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Heard a lot of good things about your podcast and, can't wait to share the experiences here. So yeah, my name is Samad Syed. I did live in Minneapolis for 14, 15 years. And
so it couldn't have been that bad. I mean, you were there for a long time.
Yeah, I was, let's say I was there, but I didn't knew the outside world and it was so good.
Okay, fair enough.
It was good. I mean, Minneapolis is a beautiful city. I miss the summers there. It's beautiful lakes out there, and it's amazing people there. You know, I'll tell you, one of the best drivers I found is in Minneapolis. That's what they say. Is they got very good drivers. So yeah, my background is that I got involved in dentistry there's an interesting story. My brother-in-law is a dentist, and he invited me to his practice a few years ago. This is early 2013, 14. And my background has been always, I worked in the corporate world to look at the processes and improve the processes and find out where we can save some money and improve the bottom lines. So that's what I used to do as a Six Sigma Master Black Belt. You know, I have
that's right. Yeah, I should have said that at the outset. Don't mess with Samad. So Black Belt here.
You can think of that as a martial arts, but I have nothing to do with martial arts. it's a product improvement tool, and that's what productivity and improving the bottom lines. That's what I did. So
it's a big deal. I'm familiar with it. That's really cool.
Yeah, so that is something what I did, and when I visited my brother-in-law, and he was like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this paperwork, man. I need help here." And he took me to the wall, and he showed me his wall of all the paperwork that is there. Is like it's not a wall of it's not wall of fame, it's wall of shame for me because it takes so much time for us to. Yeah, it takes so much time for them to just check in the patient. Is like, fill this out, fill that out, consent forms. And it's not a very good start to a relationship when you have a new patient. It's not a great
experience from the patient's end either. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and patients is like, dude, I got to do all this work just to see the doctor first. It's like, yeah, you're in pain, but just fill this out,
right.
So that could be the possibility. So that's where we started. And I said that, I took that as a project, and we started with taking an iPad and converting that into a tablet, to a clipboard, basically, where they can fill it out and submit it and everything goes in. And it took us a couple of years just to build that product, and then got integrated with the big names out there, Patterson, Andrew, Open Dental, and since then we serve about 2,500 plus offices now, and it's
awesome.
It's just been great. So 5-6 years, and we're known to have best intake processes that in the market right now.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean there's such a need out there. One of the things that you really stand behind and your company stands behind that I think is so spot on is the importance of the patient database. And you actually say that the patient database is the most important asset for a dental practice. So I'd love to get your take on that. Why do you say that? I think I know where you're going with this, but I'd love to hear it. And how are you actually leveraging or helping dental practices leverage their databases for
Great question.
growth and profitability?
Great question. We did a survey a few months ago, and we asked in the survey with the dental practices that we have in our database is that, hey, tell us, what is the most important asset that you have in your practice? And what is the most important asset that your practice owns, right? So we got answers like my location, my my equipment, my staff, all those good things. But I'll
Google
tell you
reviews.
that Google reviews and all that stuff, reputation, right, I get it. But I'll tell you that the number one asset that you have in your practice is your patient database. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
What is the difference between having a patient database of 500 patients versus 5,000 patients? It's huge. That means that you do have a database that whenever you want, you can reactivate them by connecting with them in a good ways and bring those patients back into your practice. So I'll give you an example of a dental office that we work with in Chicago area. And, as usual, hey, Samad, good friend of mine, dentist, I need help. I need to get a lot more new patients into my practice. I'm struggling. What can I do? How much do I need to spend? Help me out here. So I asked him one question, is like, how many patients you have in the database? It's like, what do you mean? Like, okay, let me take a look at it. And we connected
What database?
Yeah, what database, right? So we connected with his, with his EMR system, pulled, to see how many patients he have in his database, and we found out he has about 2,800 patients. And I asked him, like, okay, how do you keep them connected with you? How do you keep them activated? How do you keep them interested in what you're doing? He's like, all right, there's no answer there, right? So I get it. So we started a campaign, and we designed this campaign for this practice, and we said that, okay, we need to reconnect. And a simple message like, hey, Dr. Khan is looking to see, is everything okay? He hasn't seen you back for past 12 months or so. Well, it's been a year we haven't seen you back. And that one single email to his database got them 40 appointments. 40 appointments. He didn't realize that. And then we designed a 6-month strategy, and he would get 40 to 60 patients every month, just going back and connecting with them, telling them their stories, having a newsletter in place. This is all important stuff.
Automated appointment reminders, all of that.
Right. And you're in the marketing, what is the cost of patient acquisition? One new patient acquisition, trying to get in, how much does it cost? $400, $600. But this is something that's sitting in your database. And all you need to do is just reactivate that. So that's what I say. People make a huge mistake of ignoring their patient database. They need to find tools. They need to connect with their patients in whatever ways. And for that, I wrote a book, and I'm going to shamelessly advertise here. It's called The Art of Patient Re-Engagement.
You can be shameless here. Bring it on.
So I wrote a book on that.
We'll put a link to that book in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So it basically tells dental practice owners, dental managers, is that do not ignore. That's a sin if you ignore your patient database, because
so I'm curious about that. I mean, obviously, it's mistake number one, as you said, to ignore the database and do nothing with it. But what are some let's say you talk with a practice and they're engaging with you early on, and they are leveraging their database to a certain extent. What are some of the common mistakes that you see practices making when they're using their database, even to a limited extent?
I love that question, because you'll hear this answer. I do recalls, right? I do recalls. And I'll ask you that, what is the open rate on those recalls usually? It's like, you got general messaging, and, people respond, people don't respond. It's pretty low. I'm telling you, based on the survey that we did, it's pretty low. So what has happened is that people's attention span has decreased over the period of time. What's working right now is that you got to use multiple channels now to remind patients about your practice, right? In
Yeah.
different ways, in a smart ways. So you use email. Yes, you got to use
Hmm.
email. You got to use text messaging. You got to use the social media platforms out there.
Hmm.
And you have to, people don't talk about direct mailing, but direct mailing still does work. But you have to
Yeah.
mix it with like 3-4 different channels together. So
Yeah. And I mean, and you can mix in the occasional outbound phone call as well, phone calls and voicemail. I
absolutely,
mean, yeah.
absolutely, and good phone calls. And after doing all that stuff, and you'll love this, what I'm going to say is that they have to make sure that there's somebody who's answering those phone calls to book the appointments.
Yeah. And you also have to have a process in place in case that phone call is missed, because
Correct.
sometimes that does happen. You have to have, maybe a missed call text, an automated text message, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And one thing that I've seen that works is that if you make a policy within your practice that we are going to call back our patients within 7 minutes of
Hmm.
they calling us, within 7 minutes, if you miss it. And if you don't have that capacity, outsource it. Find somebody who can do it. And that's the way that you're going to make sure that you don't have a leaking bucket there that's
Yeah.
leaking all the work that you're doing. So I'll put a little bit more emphasis on patient database. The patients that you have in your database, there are other dentistries outside. There are other dentistry in your neighborhood that are willing to pay $400 to $500 to get them in their database if you're not
Sure.
reactivating them or if you're not
Yeah.
connecting with them on regular basis. So
Sure.
that's an important message that I want to take home. If nothing out of this podcast, I'm running this as a campaign to tell all the dentist managers, dental managers, dentists out there that do not ignore your patient database. That's the
Yeah.
number one asset that you have in your practice. And
So,
from this
you
podcast,
mentioned, no, go for it. I'm sorry.
and from this podcast, if they take this one message home, I think it's a success for me personally.
Absolutely. Uh, and so you mentioned 40 new appointments from that one campaign, and you obviously implemented some kind of ongoing, maybe automated or even kind of a drip campaign that way as well. And there was, untold new appointments associated with that, I'm sure. But
Mhm.
what are we talking about when we think about the cost associated with better leveraging your database? And what sort of ROI are we talking about for your average, maybe solo practice or small dental practice? Because I think let's get down to nuts and bolts here. What are the numbers we're dealing with here?
Yeah. So what we did is that we saw this as a challenge that most of the dental practices don't have as a tool in place. How do we reactivate them? What do we do to make sure that we are able to do what's being said here? So we have a tool within M-Consent that we have built in, where the practice can pull their patients and we can automatically schedule their text messaging, emails, and we can help them with messaging and all that stuff. We do help them with setup, right? So that's included in their monthly subscription,
Yeah.
and then what we help them with is that building this social media campaigns on what that can be put out there. So you an average practice, a small practice, single owner practice can, if they spend $500 a month on reactivating their database as a
Hmm.
subscription fee, and I would say another $500 they have to put in social media campaigns and paying for the ads, remarketing, and all that stuff.
Sure.
So those are that's what I would say would be an average cost for a practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what are we talking about when you work with your typical practice, say solo practitioner, when you're talking about working with a new practice and you start leveraging their database? Let's say they have, like in your example, 2,500, 3,000 contacts in that database. What kind of return on that investment do you typically see within, say, the first year of running these campaigns, provided they're following your blueprint and they're using the templates and they're checking all the boxes, so to speak? What do you see with that?
Sure. So what we see is that between 3 to 5%, depending on what kind of database, you know, quality of database you have. Meaning that are you collecting emails? Are you collecting cell phone numbers?
Yeah.
Do you have addresses on file? When you have all those things in place, you can say that if I start a campaign, you're going to start in 6 months. You're going to see at least 90 to 120 patients coming back assuming you have 3,000 patients in your database, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to see between 90 to 120 patients start to come back within that 6 months of campaign. So
Yeah.
at least 20, 30 patients starting to roll in every month. Depending on, as I said, how good is your database? Do you have good email addresses? Do you have phone numbers?
Yeah.
Correct names,
Yeah.
addresses, all that stuff. And when you run that, now ROI, you probably would. What is the cost of what is the revenue from 90 patients you're going to get in 6 months?
Yeah.
If your average production is $600 to $1,000,
Yeah.
between $70 to $90,000 in 6 months. That's what you would
Not
say.
bad, man. Not bad, man. For $500 a month or so, that
Hmm.
sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
You've talked about text messaging, obviously super important. It's got a huge open rate or read rate relative to email, but email, as you
Hmm.
said, still effective, very viable
Yeah.
channel for dental practices. We've talked about outbound calling, voicemails, and even direct mail, like you said, can still be effective if done the right way. But I want to talk about social media really quickly because that is something that I think a lot of practices are also overlooking, or maybe they post once or twice a month and call it good there. What is the opportunity in social media for practices that you see from a patient engagement and, in fact, re-engagement, reactivation standpoint? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, if it's done right, it's a very good strategy for that. For what I mean by that is that if you take let me get into nitty gritty of that, right? So on
Let's
what
do
we've
it.
seen, um, if you take like a general picture buy a picture from somewhere from the market and put it on social media and put your logo on it and say,
Yeah,
I have this coupon, and then advertise. Attention is the number one thing on social media that you have to grab. And I'll tell
right.
you, people want to see who are the actual uh, who are the actual folks that they're going to work with,
Thank you.
right?
Yes, you were
They
spot on. Yeah,
they have to see the doctor, they have to see the staff, they have to see who
yeah.
they're going to work with. And the moment you
People want to
start,
know whose hands are going to be in their mouths.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah,
when they see this personalized information, and when they see who they're going to work with, that that connects, man. I'll tell you that 100% connects. And same thing for me. If I see somebody oh, that's a doctor. Okay, looks like he's a decent guy. I gotta go see him, right?
yeah,
And when you celebrate your birthdays, don't be shy about that. Put that on
yeah,
social media. When you
yeah,
celebrate your staff baby showers,
yeah,
share with everyone.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
those are small steps, but that have a big impact. And you
Yeah,
don't have to spend a lot of ad money on that if you just start doing that stuff. You
yeah,
got to build your
absolutely.
community out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, backtrack a little bit. At the outset of this conversation, you were talking about, how this all started, how this journey started. You and your brother-in-law, I forget, but
Hmm.
the consent forms.
Hmm.
What is that process? You mentioned you developed the iPad app and that experience. What does that process look like now through M Consent, and how has that progressed? And what do you recommend that practices put in place to manage that a little bit better and make the patient experience better, as we were talking?
Uh, Absolutely. So right now, M-Consent have grown just from being a patient intake, streamlining patient intake to a complete patient engagement software, right? So
Mhm.
what does that mean? We help people in three different segments. The number one, we help with patient intake, streamlining their patient intake process, so that your patients have great experience, and also your staff is not spending hours just entering the information into their practice management system.
Yeah,
Number two, we help them with patient communication. So if you want to send a text message to a patient, you don't have a text messaging system, but still using your personal phones, that's not HIPAA
yeah,
compliant, right? So you
yeah.
need a patient communication system. And the third thing is that we help with patient growth. Patient growth is like we help with treatment plan reminders. It's so important. Like, if your treatment plan acceptance rate is less than 35-40%, then
Ooh,
you got to see what are you missing. And number one thing that you can implement immediately is that you remind your patients, just reminding them that, hey, we talked about this treatment plan. I know that you're working on your deciding on getting your root canal, but just so you know, procrastination is not going to improve your root canal automatically. Having smart messaging like that within your treatment plan reminders is going to help your treatment plan acceptance rates go up. And that's what we're talking about, is like we help in being productive, we help with patient communication, and we help with patient growth. And also we have like terminals, text to pay, improving collections, improving cash flow for the practice. So these are, 3 different areas, and we got a lot of tools to help with that: insurance verification, online scheduling, and there's a bunch of tools. But it's not like everything is going to work for everybody. We just want you to come and see, what works for your practice. Where are you struggling? Let's understand that first before we tell them, hey, this is what I have for you. No, I don't have anything for you unless you tell me that this is where you're struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, y'all have a lot going on and have developed a lot of cool products. But going forward, looking to the future, what sort of trends and innovations in patient engagement do you see on the horizon? Are you experimenting with? And what should dental practices be aware of as we enter the wild, wild west here with AI and all sorts of things?
AI is coming, and I'll tell you that the one thing that I have seen that is, and we are actually playing with it right now, is the patient notes. So notes taking and ambient. So the doctors that spend time in taking notes with patients, hours and hours, just sitting down to what did they talk to the patient. The help is coming. It's coming, and the AI is going to help them with voice notes.
Make a lot of people out there very happy. I tell you that.
And that's what's coming. And I do see positive impact of AI coming in dentistry on in those couple of places for sure. It's patient notes taking and patient charting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is all amazing. Samad, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your insight. Now, M-Consent, obviously, like you mentioned, this is a full suite of services for patient engagement. And, if folks listening to this podcast are interested in learning more, connecting with you, where can they go? What's the best place to connect with you at?
Number one is mconsent.net. So if you go to mconsent.net, just connect with us. You can connect with us on the phone. Email. There are forms on the website. We have somebody on staff that's going to get back to you very fast. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'll give you my LinkedIn link. You can post
we'll put that in the notes
people
as well.
can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Try to answer any questions people may have, and faster than usually I do it on other platforms.
Sounds good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today. What is the one thing, and I think I can guess this based on your intro, but what is the one thing you want to leave dentists with, or practice managers and administrators with today going forward? What is the one thing that you think can change their practice if they put into place?
I'll tell you, practice owners, administrators, if you're listening to this, the number one asset in your practice is your patient database. Do not ignore that. And I'll tell you that people like Dan can easily help you out, because marketing companies can easily help you out. You just have to ask them. And we do partner with a lot of people who use our tools to help you guys out. So, there's definitely a need for everyone to look into their databases.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Samad, thank you so much. mconsent.net. We'll definitely include that in the show notes. If folks listening are interested, check that out. Check out your book. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well as your LinkedIn profile, so folks can connect with you on there. Anyhow, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you dropping by today, and let's stay in touch. If I have my way about it, I would love to drag you back on the podcast here gently, I might add, but I'd love to drag you back on. So thanks so much, Samad. If you are listening to this podcast and you enjoyed the show today, please take a moment and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your shows. We would really appreciate it. Your review is the best way for us to reach other dental practices, and we would love to help them as well. So thank you so much for listening. We are back at it. We should be back at it with another show here next week. And in any case, thank you all so much for listening. And thank you, Samad, as well. I really appreciate you dropping by.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Take care.